Take care. Welcome today for joining me today in my press conference. It's a gorgeous day in Minneapolis and a gorgeous location here. Directly behind me is our city's greatest gift, our birthright, the Mississippi River. I chose our river and our neighborhoods along the river as a backdrop for my comments today for a reason. It is these neighborhoods and other neighborhoods throughout our great city that were the victims of the shameful Vikings Stadium funding plan. Even worse, the very people they elected to serve them and protect their interests misled the people living in these neighborhoods. The people of Minneapolis were led to believe that the Vikings Stadium deal would lower their taxes. The truth was otherwise. The truth was that by dedicating $675 million in future revenues to the Vikings Stadium, they guaranteed further pressure on property taxes for decades. They were led to believe that the city's 0.5% sales tax was set to expire. The truth was otherwise. You can look it up. There was no expiration date for the city's sales tax. Most importantly, the citizens of Minneapolis were led to believe that that very same sales tax, now dedicated to the Viking Stadium and Target Center, would not have been available for investments in the neighborhoods of our city. They were never told that under changes to the state law starting in 2011, any sales tax collected that were in excess of the amount needed to fund the convention center could now be used to fund capital projects anywhere in the city to promote residential, commercial, cultural, and economic development. You can look it up. I have a copy of the law for you if you would like to have it. How could this happen? Because for those advocating for the stadium, information was something to be managed, controlled, and spun. And for even many of those opposed to the stadium, this was a controversy to avoid. Too many in positions of power failed to do their job to make sure that the public had all the facts. Not only were our citizens denied a vote, they were denied any meaningful opportunity for public input on the best use of the $675 million of public funds. Our city failed the most basic requirement in a democracy, that the actions of our elected officials are transparent and that they are accountable for the choices that they make. The opportunities lost and the price to be paid in our communities is great. Just think of what $200 million over a 30-year period could have funded. For instance, $50 million capital improvement program to place early childhood centers and learning labs in our park buildings. $50 million for infrastructure improvements and capital dollars for the development of the Upper River and the Upper Harbor Terminal. And $100 million to fund capital improvements in approved NRP neighborhood plans. There is a heavy price to pay for the lack of transparency. Recently, the Star Tribune even reported on a style of governing at City Hall where decisions are made outside of the cameras. When folks are left in the dark, when they are denied the most basic information about their government, they lose trust. And when our citizens no longer place trust in City Hall, our most precious resource, our children and our citizens, are made spectators rather than active participants in civic life. I pledge to create an unprecedented level of transparency at City Hall. We will have checkbook level financial reporting so that citizens can know exactly where their money is being spent. We will put an end to the financial gimmicks that hide the real costs of the choices that we will make. And public data will be truly public data on our website and easy to find for neighborhoods and citizens alike. Minneapolis has a proud history of citizen activism and neighborhood vitality. At their best, elected leaders value the ideas and energy of our citizens. This is what the NRP is all about. It is time to rebuild the trust between City Hall and the people it serves by pulling the curtain from City Hall and putting people over politics. I'm Stephanie Woodruff and I'm running for mayor. I would be happy to discuss any questions you have today.
The mayor's office, when they were, this was brought up during the stadium debate, and one thing that they said was, hey look, there's no sunset on these taxes, but we know the legislature, we know that they always want to pull the taxes away whenever they can. And so, why should we leave it to that chance? And so Ryback assumed that they would be taken away.
It's clear in the report. I have a copy of the report today. Back in 2009, that it was granted that they would not expire. So,
But I'm just saying he was talking about the politics of it, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here. He was saying, why should we? The legislature always wants to take these kinds of things away from Minneapolis. Why leave it to chance?
I can't comment on what Ryback was thinking.
So what are the nuts and bolts kinds of things that you would change at City Hall?
Yeah, the number one, transparency. Number one. The U.S. Public Interest Research Group gave Minneapolis a D- rating in the overall transparency. There's no checkbook level spending online. It's unacceptable.
Do you know how much that would cost? That seems...
In my mind, it's not even about cost. If cities like New York and Chicago are doing it and doing it very well, we've actually went out to their websites. It's not complicated. The information is there, right? So it's something that is, to me, it's not expensive to do. It's more about making a commitment to make sure that transparency is there, so that all of our citizens have that information and feel engaged.
Talk a little bit about checkbook level spending, because I think I understand what it is, but maybe you should clarify.
Yeah, if you go out to other cities that had received a higher rating, they literally have the entire checkbook online. So and we do a pretty good job in terms of providing budget information, but it's such a huge process, and it takes forever, and it's constantly changing. That's something that needs to be real time online, so that the residents, and the citizens have a voice. And that's something that I've learned as a first time candidate. I was shocked to know, that this is something that's really critical to our citizens today. I'm out in the neighborhoods knocking on their doors, and this is a huge issue for them. They don't feel that City Hall really values what they have to say. They feel, they literally say, we got screwed. We're getting screwed. They don't feel engaged whatsoever.
When did you learn about this information that that people were misled?
We've been doing some kind of behind the scenes research, and just kind of formulated it all over the weekend.
Okay.
In terms of gathering all the information from the Minnesota House and the research department. And it doesn't surprise me, because it goes along with my entire theme to bring transparency and open government. I seem to be the only opponent really pushing that, because that's my background for the last 30 years. Transparency, good governance is good business.
Right.
And like I said, it's not expensive to do. It's a matter of priorities. It's a matter of commitment, because when you can engage all of the residents and have an open data, an open government, then everybody is empowered, everybody's on the same page to know, how decisions are made, so that they feel empowered, that they feel trust, within City Hall.
I'm paraphrasing myself here, but when the report came out and we asked the city about this, they talked about how, when the stimulus came out, they did something akin to checkbook level spending, and they found that the public interest in such a website was not high enough to justify continuing to do it. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I saw that comment.
Or not continue to do it, but to expand it to a city-wide thing.
No, and that was good reporting, Eric, when you wrote the article about the D- rating. In my mind, it's a cop-out excuse. If someone says, the public isn't interested in this, therefore we're not going to do it, that's not good enough. It should just be a given that our government has that type of transparency, that is, the people, the taxpayers deserve to know that information. Now, if they want to, look it up, it's their prerogative. But we have got to provide that information. I think that's a cop-out excuse to say, well, no one really asked for it, therefore, we're not going to do it. That's not the way, Woodruff as mayor, my administration would not operate that way. It's something that's going to be number one within the first 100 days of my administration, to make sure that we have proper transparency over all of the information, so that our residents feel empowered. we are going to work from the bottom up to make sure that everybody feels involved. And, then it's up to a citizen. If they want to take the time to look it up, then they're welcome to. But the information is going to be there. They deserve that information.
And just returning to the taxes for a moment, if I understand what you're saying, is that you have confidence that the legislature would not have revoked these taxes once the convention center bonds were paid off?
I don't have confidence either way. I'm just saying how this entire deal was put together, that the public was misled thinking that that tax would expire, and the fact that that tax couldn't be used on anything other than stadium construction.
The mayor's office, is there other legal minds on that? The mayor's office has, whether or not they're whitewashing people, they have sort of denied that frame of the legal argument that this was possible in the past. Diane Loeffler thinks it was possible in the past, but do we know more than just these sort of clashing opinions? I just want to know if there's any more information out there.
I don't, unless
I'm willing to jump in here. Stephanie's the candidate,
Yep.
but I was on the city council for 12 years, and no one ever said, "Oh my gosh, they're going to take this tax away from us." So I have a history here where I can say that was a complete red herring, and the notion that a Democratic legislature with a Democratic governor, with a Minneapolis Speaker of the House, would take away the city sales tax is laughable. It's just laughable. It was never credible. So the whole notion that we got to spend this on something or we're going to lose it was never going to happen. And that's the part of it that I think is frankly most outrageous, with this kind of straw man that was set up. That was never a threat in my view. And again, I can speak.
And you have that history from
you
were there
12 years. That just was not a realistic threat at all.
If I was the mayor, it would have been done differently in terms of the transparency.
If you were the mayor, what do you do moving forward? Dan Cohen has talked about not sending any money, which has its own implications or maybe legal ramifications. But what do you do? What's the plan?
I haven't even looked into that in terms of what the legal ramifications are. I'm focused on the next 26 days moving forward in terms of trying to bring my platform to the table to make sure that we have sustainable growth, and where we need to invest in the city is right here on North Minneapolis and the Upper Harbor Terminal. We need to create living wage and sustainable jobs and transit that is smart to move people to those jobs, and we need to make sure that we become the smartest city, and we need to do it in a very transparent and open way. So, that's what I'm focused on over the next 26 days until November 5th to get elected. Then, when that happens, when I step in as mayor, then we'll take a look at that in terms of, do we have recourse to make sure that we can maybe recapture, some of that money? But it's not, it's very complicated. It's not something that I want myself or my team to look into. We're working really hard. We feel really, really confident in terms of the message. And the donations are pouring in, the support is pouring in. We're really, really jazzed. And as you know, the latest poll that came out, it's anybody's ball game. So we are focused on those three areas in terms of sustainable growth, smartest city, and open and transparent government. So that's what we're focused on the next 26 days out till November 5th.
Stephanie, we were in the north side a couple days ago, and a lot of the community was complaining that they don't have computers, they don't have access to, what people who have computers and the internet have. So you're talking about this transparency online, but how are you going to address it to people who are so disenfranchised that they can't even access or know how to access that?
Well, and that's a great point, Kate. That's exactly where my learning labs come into play in terms of investing in our children in our poorest neighborhoods to leverage our existing park buildings, to implement my idea for learning labs, and to provide tablets and free Wi-Fi and internet for anybody that that wants it. When I door knock on the north side, the biggest thing that parents say is that they can't afford internet access for their children to do their homework. Okay, and that's something that's so easy to access in terms of now that we have the the city Wi-Fi. We need to get back to the basics and start putting people first. So that's number one in terms of providing those labs and to make sure that all of those kids have access to some type of a tablet or a smartphone or something, so that every resident in this city can access whatever data they want, to feel empowered and get it back to the neighborhoods.